Multiply 8.23 times 0.005. I begin by writing this question vertically, beginning with 8.23, and underneath I write the 0.005 because this number has fewer non-zero digits. I need to multiply the 5 by the digits above, beginning with 5 times 3. 5 times 3 is 15. I'll write the 5 and I'll carry the 1. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 1 above is 11, so I'll write a 1 and carry a 1. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 1 is 41. Now, I need to determine where to put the decimal in my answer, the decimal point. I add up all of the digits to the right of the decimal point in these two numbers. 8.23 has 2 digits to the right of the decimal point. 0.005 has 3 digits to the right of the decimal point. The total of 2 and 3 is 5. I need to go 5 places to the left in order to, and that's where I need to place my decimal point. So moving 5 places to the left tells me I need to insert a 0 in my answer. The answer to this multiplication problem is 0.04115. Multiply 0.12 times 39.7. I'll begin by writing this vertically with the 39.7 above and the 0.12 below, because the 0.12 has fewer non-zero digits. My first step is to multiply the 2 by the digits above, beginning with 2 times 7. 2 times 7 is 14. I'll write the 4 and carry the 1. 9 times 2 is 18. Carry the 1 is 19. I'll write the 9 and carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Now I no longer need these carried digits. I write a 0 as a placeholder. My next step is to multiply 1 by the digits above, beginning with 1 times 7, which is 7. 1 times 9 is 9. 1 times 3 is 3. Multiplying by 0 I don't need to do because the answers for 0 times each of the digits above would all be 0. So I add up these columns beginning from the right. 4 plus 0 is 4. 9 plus 7 is 16, and I'll carry the 1. 1 plus 7 plus 9 is 17. Carry the 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. In order to determine the placement of the decimal point in my answer, I add up all of the digits to the right of the decimal point in the two numbers which I am multiplying together. 39.7 has 1 digit to the right of the decimal point. 0.12 has 2 digits to the right of the decimal point. 1 plus 2 is 3. I need to move from the right towards the left 3 places in order to place the decimal point in my answer. So the answer to this question is 4.764. Multiply negative 3.15 times negative 6. I'll write this question vertically. And I'll remember that if I'm multiplying two negative numbers, the answer is positive. I begin by multiplying 6 by 5 above. 6 times 5 is 30. I'll write the 0 and carry the 3. Six times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. 6 times 3 is 18. Now, because negative 3.15 has 2 digits to the right of the decimal point, my answer also needs 2 digits to the right of the decimal point. So the final answer to this question is positive 18.90. You could also just write 18.90 without the plus sign for positive in the front. Calculate the area of the given rectangle. We remember area is the space within a figure, and for a rectangle, area equals length times width. So for this rectangle, area equals 3.7 times 1.6. I'll perform that multiplication vertically, and I'll begin by multiplying 6 by 7. 6 times 7 is 42, so I'll write the 4, and I'll carry the 4 and I'll write the 2. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 4 is 22. Now I write 0 as a placeholder, and I multiply 1 with the digits above. 1 times 7 is 7, and 1 times 3 is 3. I add these columns. Now, because 3.17 had 1 digit to the right of the decimal point, and 1.6 had 1 digit to the right of the decimal point, my answer requires a total of 2 digits to the right of the decimal point. So I'll put my decimal point in, and now I know that my answer is that the area equals 5.92 square centimeters. Divide 11.12 divided by 4. Division with decimals is very similar to division with ordinary numbers, except for I need to be careful of the placement of my decimal point in the quotient. For this problem, we bring the decimal point from the 11.12 directly above. This will be the placement of the decimal point in my answer. Since 4 does not divide into 1, we divide 4 into 11. 4 goes into 11 twice. 4 times 2 is 8, and 11 minus 8 is 3. I bring down the 1. 4 goes into 31 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. 31 subtract 28 is 3. And I bring down the 2. 4 goes into 32 8 times. 8 times 4 is 32. And I subtract to get a remainder of 0. So the answer to this question is 2.78. Divide 35 divided by 0.05. I begin by moving the decimal point 2 places to the right in the divisor, so that I'm dividing by a whole number. I match that by also moving the decimal point 2 places to the right in the dividend. I need to fill in the empty places with zeros. And I bring this decimal point directly above. This will be the placement of the decimal point in my answer, the quotient. Now, I'm dividing by 5. 5 does not divide into 3, but 5 divides into 35 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. Subtract to obtain 0. 5 goes into 0 times, and 5 also goes into 0 times, so that the answer is 700. $51.2 divided by 3. Because the divisor 3 is a whole number, we do not need to worry about the placement of the decimal point. Simply bring the decimal point from the dividend, 51.2, above. This will be the placement of the decimal in my answer, the quotient. 3 goes into 5 once. 3 times 1 is 3. 5 minus 3 is 2. Bring down the 1. 3 goes into 21 7 times. 7 times 3 is 21. 21 minus 21 is 0. Bring down the 2. 3 goes into 2 0 times. 3 times 0 is 0. 2 minus 0 is 2. I need to keep going because the question asks me to round the answer to the nearest hundredth. In order to correctly round to the nearest hundredth, I first need a number which goes past the hundredths place to at least the thousandths place, so that I can correctly round to the hundredths place. So I'll add a 0 to the end of the decimal. Remember, this does not change its value, and I'll bring it down. 3 goes into 20 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. 20 minus 18 is 2. I still do not have a decimal that is expressed to the thousandths place. So again, I'll add a 0 and bring it down. 3 goes into 20 6 times. Again, 6 times 3 is 18. And 20 minus 18 is 2. We see this process is going to continue to repeat itself over and over again. But I have at least a decimal that is expressed to the thousandths place, so I can correctly round to the hundredth place. Because the digit in the thousandth place is 5 or higher, it rounds the hundredths place up to a 7. The final answer to this question is 17.07. Convert the fraction 11/6 to a decimal. Round your answer to 1 decimal place. We can write 11/6 as a division problem, 11 divided by 6. In order to round to 1 decimal place, we will first need the quotient to 2 decimal places so that I can use the hundredths place in order to round correctly to the tenths place. So I add a 0.00 onto the end of 11. 6 divides into the 11 once. 6 times 1 is 6. 11 minus 6 is 5. I bring down a 0. 6 goes into 50 8 times. 6 times 8 is 48. 50 subtract 48 is 2. I bring down a 0. 6 goes into 23 times. 6 times 3 is 18, with 2 left over. We can stop here because I have enough information to round to 1 decimal place. I look at the hundredths place in order to decide how to round. Since I have a digit that's less than 5, the 8 stays an 8, but I end my decimal after the tenths place. The final answer to this question is 1.8. Convert the fraction 4/5 to a decimal. Fractions indicate division. What we have here is 4 divided by 5. Since 5 doesn't divide into 4, we add a decimal point and a 0, and we bring that decimal point above. 5 divides into 40 8 times, and 5 times 8 is 40, so there is a remainder of 0. As a decimal, 4/5 is equal to 0.8. (12.5 minus 0.3 squared). Because of the order of operations, I need to do the 0.3 squared before the subtraction. I remember that squaring a quantity means multiplying it twice. So I need to multiply 0.3 times 0.3. 3 times 3 is 9, and because each of the numbers I'm multiplying has 1 digit to the right of the decimal point, my answer will have 2 digits to the right of the decimal point, giving me 0.09. Now I'm ready to do the subtraction. I will write the subtraction vertically, lining up the decimal points, and adding a 0 on as a placeholder to the end of 12.5. Since I can't take 9 away from 0, I borrow from the 5, which becomes a 4, and makes the 0 a 10. 10 minus 9 is 1. 4 minus 0 is 4. 2 minus 0 is 2, and I bring down the 1 and put in my decimal point. The answer to this question is 12.41. Evaluate negative 0.5 plus 7.25 times 0.1. Order of operations tells us that we need to do the multiplication before the addition. So I begin by multiplying 7.25 times 0.1. I start by multiplying the 1 by the 5, 1 times 2, and 1 times 7. Because 7.25 has 2 digits to the right of the decimal point, and 0.1 has 1 digit to the right of the decimal point, my answer requires 3 digits to the right of the decimal point, 0.725. Now I'm ready to do the subtraction. Negative 0.5 plus 0.725. Because these numbers are different in sign, I'll calculate the difference of their absolute values. Lining up the decimal points and adding zeros as placeholders onto negative 0.5 gives me 5, 2, 2, 0, and bring in my decimal point. The answer is positive 0.225. Calculate the perimeter of the given rectangle. Remember that perimeter is distance around a figure, so I want to add up these 4 numbers. I'll write them vertically, lining up the decimal points, and adding zeros as placeholders onto the end of each 3.6. Adding down the columns gives me 8. 1 plus 6 plus 1 plus 6 is 14. I'll write the 4 and carry the 1. 1 plus 3 is 7. 1 plus 1 is 2. And I will bring down the decimal point. The answer to this question is 27.48 inches. Find the mean of these 4 numbers. Mean is a different word for average. To calculate the mean, I add up these 4 numbers and divide the sum by 4. To add up the 4 numbers, I'll write them vertically, lining up the decimal points. I'll add a decimal point and a 0 as a placeholder onto the end of 131. Adding down the columns gives me 9 plus 7 is 16. Write the 6 and carry the 1. 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 is 7. 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 12. Write the 2 and carry the 1. And the sum of these 5 ones is 5. I'll bring down the decimal point, and I have the sum of the four numbers to be 527.6. Now I divide this sum by 4, since there were 4 numbers in my list. Since I'm dividing by a whole number, I don't need to move any decimal points. Just bring the decimal point from the dividend directly above, and this will be the placement of the decimal point in my quotient. Now, 4 goes into 5 once. 4 times 1 is 4. Subtract to obtain 1. Bring down the 2. 4 goes into 12 3 times. 4 times 3 is 12, and 12 minus 12 is 0. Bring down the 7. 4 goes into 7 once. 4 times 1 is 4, and 7 minus 4 is 3. Bring down the 6, and 4 goes into 36 9 times. The answer to this question is 131.9. Find the median of these four numbers. First, I will add a decimal point and a 0 onto the end of this 131 so that all four numbers are expressed to the tenths place. Next, I will list the numbers in order from least to greatest. Median means middle of a data set. When I have an even number of elements in my data set, the way that I find the median is by taking the average of the two middle values. So I will add up these two middle values and divide their sum by 2. To add up the two middle values, I will read the numbers vertically and add down my columns. And put in my decimal point to obtain a sum of 263.7. Next, I will divide that sum by 2 to find the average of the two middle values. 2 goes into 2 once. Bring down the 6. 2 goes into 6 3 times evenly. Bring down the 3. 2 goes into 3 once, with 1 left over. Bring down the 7. 2 goes into 17 8 times, with 1 left over. And if I bring down a 0, 2 goes into 10 5 times evenly, with a remainder of 0. So the average of the two middle numbers is 131.85. Therefore, the median of the data set is 131.85. Find the mode of this data set. First, I'll add a decimal point and a 0 onto the end of this 131 so that all four numbers are expressed to the tenths place. The mode of a data set is the data value that occurs the most often. For this data set, we see that the value 131 or 131.0 occurs twice, whereas the other numbers occur just once. Therefore, 131 or 131.0 is the mode of this data set.